a question came in from a listener. Dr. E, Jen, we have a child with SM and then a younger child that doesn't have SM. And we noticed that the younger child is acting out a lot. It seems that he gets so easily frustrated, especially when we're trying to do our different games with our older child and the different goals. And I'm trying to really put effort into it. We noticed the younger child is really acting out. What advice do you have about that? And why is that happening?
So this is the jealousy piece,
this
right?
is the resentment. This is like, are we just putting all our efforts on the child with SM? Almost like, not that, like really everything, but we're are we neglecting the younger guy in this situation? Is there other reasons he's acting out? Does he have his own challenges, like emotional dysregulate, whatever it might be? I mean, there could be a million reasons, right?
Sure.
But let's just say there's a relationship because the mom clearly, or the dad who wrote this in clearly said, it seems that when we're doing our games and goals, our child's getting like angry, upset, and almost like even mentioned being destructive at times.
Sure. Well, if we're looking at this from let's just take it from that jealousy standpoint, we have a younger child. And one, do they understand that, hey, your older sibling is going through something and they need our attention? Sometimes our children don't always understand the why behind why we're doing things to the level that we do as an adult. So addressing things in an age appropriate way is good. But the other part is, we can't expect our youngest children to give us all the grace and space to do these things, that sometimes we might just have to implement some goals for them too. So one is that if we're seeing a lot of jealousy that's coming up and we've had some conversation of, your brother needs this and so we're helping, that might be well and good, but then it's talk about it, but then do something about it. And so the doing part might mean, what does your younger child need to do? So are we looking at giving a younger child some sense of responsibility when we're out working on goals, that they have something they can do too to be part of it? Or do we take it to the degree of, if the older one is sort of charting what they're working on, do we give both kids a chart and they just work on something separate? But we can talk to our child. And sometimes our parents are like, but we've had conversations. We tell them that they need this. They're struggling with this. And I usually will say, yes, talk about it, but then let's do something with it. So what's the doing part? And that might mean giving a chart. So what could a chart look like? If your older one is tracking all the times they've paid for something in a store, or they're going out working on whatever the strategy is that is specific for that child. How about for the younger one, that when they're out, they're going to be the one to put things in the cart and carry their own little cart with them, and they're going to have their own thing that they work on, so that they feel that they're being highlighted, lifted up, attention is being spent on them and the good stuff that they're doing too? Or is it chores at home, or putting their toys away? What are we charting with them as well? And
we know that a large percentage of individuals with selective mutism have that social anxiety, and that we've done family history studies, and a very large percentage have that genetic component. So now you're almost getting a 2-for-1.
Sure.
Why not if this child is a timid child, a highly sensitive timid child, for example, they'll benefit from a lot of our goals and games and things, to have their own charts. I have so many different goal charts that I use with my child with SM, but their siblings have their own chart. We may make it a different color and things like that, but they're working on their goals too. If that is a good type of thing to implement involving that child, like you said, now you could reverse it where the older child is acting out. So it's an older sibling with a younger child with SM. So instead of so now it's reversed, right? It's the same concepts. Why? What I tend to see in some of the older kids, if they are feeling the neglect a bit, or jealousy, is they seem to be a little more on the sadder side, not as acting out, where the younger kids will act out more behavioral dysregulation. I just see it because it's little kids will act out when they can't get their needs met. Whereas older kids that don't get their needs met, they may act out, but I see more sadness and depression. So before you're jumping in treating meds for your older kid and saying she's, or he is depressed, let's figure out what might be causing some of those challenges. And if there is a role of maybe I'm not able, I've noticed I haven't been, look, I work with a family now that has 3 special needs children, 3. Well, there was a child with selective mutism, another child with learning challenges, and the other one that has autism, which is challenging in itself. And this mother and this whole family, she has a partner, they're pulling their hair out. They don't know what's up and down. They're so stressed themselves. So you're seeing these acting out and these other things happening. So you got to like look at that too. Mm-hmm. But if you were to kind of say, let's piece things out just for our listeners' piece, that there is a neglectful, they're not on purpose. They're just so busy, right? Mm-hmm. They're working, they're trying to juggle their family, all the responsibilities of life. It's crazy. They're noticing their older child is becoming more aloof, you know, depending on the age, it may not be uncommon, as you said, with middle schoolers, right? It's a time they start to go within themselves more and they're really thinking of things. We got to deal with that. We have to deal with that. And it may mean that, especially if you have a partner, and some families don't, there's single parents raising children, but maybe they have extended family members that can help, family friends that can help, where they're now kind of giving time to that other child, maybe doing different things. Mom takes one child out, dad takes another child out, one goes to grandma's, one goes to Aunt Sally's. You see what I mean? One goes to a play date. Like, you got to make sure. It's hard. The more kids you have, the harder it is.
Sure. Well, there's more dynamics, more needs, lots of unique needs. And I agree with you. Having a family system or having a peer group, a community that will help you. And that could be, like you said, whether
it takes a village, a community village.
Spouse, partner, neighbor, cousin, uncle, it doesn't matter. We need to have more people on board to give us a hand. And that can be also really challenging for parents in the busyness of life, is to find who those people are and involve them.
Yeah, no, for sure. We got another question from a listener. Dr. E and Jen, I have a 7-year-old with S. We're about to start treatment. So they're fresh and new, Jen, with so much to do. Our daughter is mute in public settings and at school. We've noticed our 5-year-old becomes mute also. Is it possible that our younger child has selective mutism also? I mean,
it's a good question.
It's a great question. Yeah. Well, number one, we can't answer that by just this, right?
Correct.
But we can ask some questions.
Yeah. Well, I mean, right away, the quick answer is, could this be selective mutism? The answer is yes, it could be.
Yeah.
But it also could not be.
Right, exactly.
So we want to make sure we're exploring that. A few things that come to mind too, especially because they're new to treatment. Then I have questions about what have they been doing already that's been working, because that age difference, a few things. One, if the parents haven't been giving a lot of opportunities. So what I mean by that is, I'm going to go backwards for a minute. Think about post-COVID, the first year after COVID. A lot of parents weren't going out to stores, taking their kids to restaurants. So if we've gotten into a habit of not being out and about, we haven't had a lot of opportunities. How is our child even, how do we even to assess or observe what they can do if we haven't had a lot of opportunities? So sometimes I look and say, what are your opportunities to bring the 7-year-old into communication? One, that's one thing. And the other part is, if we're not having a lot of opportunities, we should try that. We should try, because SM and the work around SM is not a individual treatment. It is a family system. It's a family treatment. It's about changing the culture of your family. So one, if we are giving opportunities to our 7-year-old and we start to pick those up a little bit more and see how they're functioning, do we still see that similarity with opportunities? Because our 5-year-old may be able to do more if we're providing opportunities for them to do more. The other hand, if that 5-year-old is not, that's where I look and say, are we mimicking what my 7-year-old? And that's why the opportunities are needed to rule out, is it a mimic or is there truly a challenge?
No, I think that's great. I feel like I could have written this question into somebody when I was going through this with my daughter, because my daughter, Sophie, was older, 2 years older than, well, year and a half older than Jenna. Everyone knows Jenna now and Sophie, but Jenna would mimic her. So in other words, when we would go to swimming lessons or we would go to gymnastics, Jenna just zipped it up. But guess what? When Jenna was away from Sophie in like a social situation, or not away from Sophie, but away from like a social situation on her own, like in school, and Sophie wasn't independent, wasn't with her, Jenna was a chatterbox. And, by the way, she still is.
Yes.
And so is Sophie now. But back then, Sophie was not. And she really struggled in social situations. Obviously, that's the impetus to my work. But Jenna would just shut down and she'd just follow her sibling and her older sister around and do whatever Sophie did. So I know there's a lot of listeners out there with the same dynamics as that I experienced. So when this family wrote this question, I'm like, I could have been me.
Yeah.
But the answer, the way a quick answer, like you were sharing, is, what is she like when she's not with her sister? Or what is that child like when they're not with their sibling? Are they SM? Do they go to school? Are they mute in school? Now, I do have some that are. But it doesn't mean it's the same level of severity, let's say.
It doesn't present the same.
It doesn't present the same. But since SM is a social communication anxiety disorder, whether they're mute in school or not, if there's areas they're struggling socially, communicatively, they can always benefit, right, from support. And those are the kids that, one, I do try to separate a little bit, have them have separate play dates, take them out separate, so that child can see themselves in a role where they're not necessarily with their sister mimicking, and they can be their own person. And if they have a friend, to have that friend join with them. So like if this were Jenna, I would have said, hey, Jenna and Sarah, maybe they'll do gymnastics together. And for this season, maybe we'll separate them out. And then you've got the parent go, but I can't, I'm only one person and I need to do them together. I'm just saying to you, if it is a mimicking situation, it's really hard to rationalize with a very young child. In fact, if you talk too much about it with them, you are
over identity of it.
Yeah, you actually are reinforcing that connection, and they may do it even more. Yeah. And I can think of like 3 or 4 families I'm working with right now where the child separated from their sibling is not SM.
Sure.